Here we are. It is the required video for every single Formula One content creator on the planet to make as soon as that calendar hits 2025. It's time to predict the driver's standings. Welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. We are here to predict our 2025 driver standings. It's like a month before the cars are even revealed, much less on track for testing. So we have no idea what the pace of each team is going to be like, but that doesn't matter. We're going to predict it anyways. If we're right, we look like geniuses. If we're wrong, we have an excuse, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so excited to record this episode. It truly is kind of a mystery, especially with how last season ended. Who's going to be on top to start the season, and who knows how the season's going to go. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm up and down the field. I have no idea what the pecking order could be. There is one thing I think I know for certain, though, and that has to be that Sauber is going to be the slowest. And that is why in P20, I've started it off with Gabriel Bortoleto. He has to be last. It's nothing against him. I think he's a quick driver. He's shown it in the junior categories. But in my mind, that car, new driver to Formula One, a teammate who I expect to outperform him, I think he is the obvious choice for P20. And even though we have separate prep sheets, I feel like you're going to say the exact same thing here.
Yes, I've also gone with Gabriel Bortoleto in P20. Like you said, I think he's a quick driver. I think he has a lot of potential to be a great driver in Formula One. I just don't think that car is going to be fast this year. And unfortunately, as we saw with Zhou Guanyu these last few years, there's just not a lot of opportunities for him to score points. And without those opportunities, I just don't think P20 is going to be the most he can do. So,
yeah, and I truly hope that this isn't his only season in Formula One. I hope he gets a chance maybe when the team becomes Audi and he can actually drive a more competitive car than what figures to be the slowest car for the entirety of next year. But rooting for him, even though we have both put him in P20. P19, I've gone for Jack Doohan. I think the Alpine will be much improved to what it was this year. This is for the simple fact, and I haven't included this in how the standings go down the road, but it is the simple fact that I don't think Jack Doohan races the whole year. You can call that bold, but in my mind, there's no reason that they signed Franco Colapinto if it wasn't going to be for him to be in the car. There's rumors floating around that Jack has 6 races to prove his worth. Maybe they could change it at the midway point. I don't know. But in my mind, unfortunately, it seems harsh, but I don't see Jack Doohan finishing out the year, and so I have put him in P19 in my driver standings.
yeah, I think that's a pretty good take, honestly. I think with the Franco signing that Jack's got a lot more pressure than we maybe initially thought he did. Maybe they're thinking that was too early to sign him. Looking back on it, who knows? I have gone with Nico Hülkenberg in P19 just because I think that Sauber is going to be really, really slow. I think it was a good signing for them to get Nico, but I think the car is just not going to be, fast enough for him to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good choice. In my mind, it's pretty obvious that I think that Sauber is going to be fairly focused on 2026 and becoming Audi and getting that project winning. I feel like 2025 is kind of sacked off for them. So that's a good choice. I've gone for Isaac Hadjar in P18. I think that Racing Bulls, as they will be called in 2025, will not be that quick of a car. I think if you saw how the trend went of last year, they really weren't all that quick. There was all this hype about that team being a true Red Bull B team, and we were like, they're going to run the RB19, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 Red Bull. It wasn't even close to that. That car is pretty terrible. And then with the Red Bull getting worse, surely that car is going to get worse too if they're borrowing from it. So I just don't see a lot of hope for Racing Bulls. Obviously, Isaac Hazard being the rookie, I think he'll have a good year, but probably be solidly outperformed by Yuki Tsunoda. I have put him in P18.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. I've gone with Jack Doohan in P18. Again, I kind of wanted to hedge my prediction a little bit with the fact that he might not be racing the whole season. However, I do think the Alpine is going to start off the year a lot better than they did last year. And so I think there might be some opportunities for him to score some points here and there, especially in the first few races before everybody kind of figures things out. So I've gone with Jack Doohan in P18. We'll see what happens, but I feel bad for him, honestly, because I think he was given the shot, and now I feel like they're kind of like, we don't really like you anymore, but we have a contract, so
Yeah, I
I don't
mean
know.
that's how it feels a little bit. I do feel bad for him as well. At least Australia is at the beginning of the year, so if he gets dropped 6 races in, he did get a home race, so
That's true. That's
that's
true.
good for him, I guess. P17, I've gone for Nico Hulkenberg. Very similar to your reasons for Nico Hulkenberg, as you explained earlier. I just don't see that car being very quick. I expect Nico Hulkenberg to get the most out of that car. Obviously, he is now familiar with driving a car that has a Ferrari engine in the back of it, as that Sauber does. But I just think overall that car is going to be slow. It doesn't matter how much Nico Hulkenberg outperforms it. It'll still probably be like P14, and we're like, woo! So unfortunately, I think P17 is where Nico Hulkenberg will end up.
Yeah, I think in P17, maybe this is one I struggled with a lot. But I've gone with Esteban Ocon in P17. Haas had a great year this past year, and I don't know if this is just me having some negative bias towards Esteban, just because I think he is not a great teammate, someone who's kind of hard to get along with as a teammate, but I don't know that he's going to get the most out of that car like Nico did, like Kevin did at times. Um, so I've gone with him in P17. We'll see what happens, but I think the Haas will have, I think they'll have a better car, but I don't know that the driver lineup is going to be able to get the most out of it.
Well, our last memory of Esteban Ocon was him getting dropped. And so if we have negative bias towards him, it's to be expected because of what happened to him. So that's fair. I have put Esteban Ocon quite a bit higher than that. So we disagree a little bit. P16, I've gone for Alex Albon. Williams is one of the few midfield teams that did not appear to be on an upward trajectory at the end of last season. It was more of a can we crawl through the finish line of this year with whatever pieces we have left over in the factory. Even James Vowles said himself that that slows the development of the next year's car and can hinder progress forwards. I think Williams are still clearly strides ahead from where they were a couple years ago and are on an overall upward trajectory, but I don't really see it continuing into this next season. I've gone for Alex Albon in P16.
Yeah, I think Williams was another one that I struggled with. But in P16 for me, I've gone with Ollie Behrman. So I've got the two Haas drivers right there next to each other. Um, I think Ollie's going to have a good season. I think he will be given more opportunity in Formula One because of how he performs. But I think it's going to be a really up and down season because that car isn't going to be able to be very consistent. Most consistent driver that Haas has had these last, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 seasons is Nico Hulkenberg, in my opinion. And I think Ollie getting to grips with things, driving in Formula One for, I guess, not the first time, but first full season, he's going to have a lot of ups and downs. So I think he'll be on the grid further than just this season, but I think this first season will be a lot of ups and downs. I've got him in P16.
Hey, technically, we watched Ollie Behrman beat Nico Hulkenberg multiple times last season, so the potential is there, but we will have to see how it plays out across an entire season. You are making me second guess where I put the two Haas drivers, but I'm sticking to my guns and saying that I think Haas will be better than you do this year, apparently. P15, I've gone for Yuki Tsunoda. Pretty much everything I said for Isaac Hadjar, just copy and paste it here. I don't think that team's going to be quick. I think Yuki Tsunoda will beat him, score points fairly consistently, but I just don't think that car as a whole is going to be consistently fighting for points when compared to the rest of the midfield. I feel like we have the top four, and then you've got like Alpine and Haas based on how that ended last year. Who knows where Aston Martin will be in that mix? And so then that just really doesn't leave a lot of points on the table for everyone else. And I think that is part of why I put Yuki Tsunoda this low.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I've gone with Isaac Hadjar in P15, so Yuki's teammate. Which I know what you're thinking. Like, Brandon, this might be a really hot take here because we've got a lot of rookies this year, and I put Isaac Hadjar in front of Gabriel Bortoleto, Ollie Behrman, guys that have maybe you would think would do better than Isaac. I think Racing Bulls is going to be a little bit faster. than those other teams. I think they're just going to have a little bit more opportunities to score points. I'm thinking that also Isaac Hadjar is going to get a full season in the car. So, I mean, honestly, with Red Bull and RB, who knows who's going to be in those seats other than Max Verstappen by the end of the year. But um, I think Isaac's going to get a full season. I think he's going to have some more opportunities. And I think he's going to want to prove himself. So I think that he's going to finish in P15. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will have to see. I think that will be a more interesting teammate battle this year between Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda, two drivers who have had a little bit of a hot head in the cockpit before, so we'll have to see if they come to blows this year. P14, I have gone for Lance Stroll. This is kind of a wild card with Aston Martin and where they will be versus the beginning of the year versus when Adrian Newey has some influence on that car. I have put him this low for the simple fact that I just don't think he's that great of a driver. He's great compared to me. He's made it to Formula One. I'll give him that. But I don't know if he deserves to keep that seat for much longer. It just feels like he is on a trajectory of average, if not getting worse and making more silly mistakes every year. I think obviously he will be outperformed by Fernando Alonso. So I have put Lance Stroll in P14.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Aston Martin was one that I really struggled with a lot. I have them a little bit higher. I have Lance a little bit higher. But in P14, I've gone with Yuki Tsunoda. Like I said, I think the RB is going to be faster than Haas and Stake, but I just don't know that Yuki and Isaac are going to get any further up in the driver standings than P14 and 15. I think there's going to be a lot more fighting in the midfield this year than there was last year, honestly. So I've gone with Yuki in P14.
Hey, we haven't agreed since P20, so hopefully we will start agreeing again at some point. P13, I've gone for Carlos Sainz. I think he will outperform that Williams. I think he will outperform Alex Albon. Part of me wanted to put Carlos Sainz even higher up the grid just because it felt terrible to put his name any lower than this. I got to like P9 and I was like, surely I need to type Carlos Sainz at some point. And P13 is the highest I can give him in good conscience. Unfortunately, I don't think that Williams will be a car that allows him to fully showcase his skill, but should the opportunities be there, I think Carlos Sainz will take advantage of them, score points on multiple occasions throughout the year, and have a fairly solid season, as solid as one could have in that Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I think P13 would be a great finish for either of those drivers, which is why I've gone with Alex Albon in P13. I was, when I was making my predictions, I started at P20. So I was, filling in those, and then I was like, man, I don't have a Williams driver in there yet. And maybe, I don't know. I just think Williams is not going to be as bad as those other teams. Not necessarily that they're going to be fast, but I just think they're going to be not as bad, not as slow, if that makes sense. So I've gone with Alex Albon in P13. And I definitely struggled with the same thing with Carlos Sainz that you did, which is why he was able to sneak a little higher in my predictions. But I'm hoping that Williams will have a better season than they did last year. We'll see what happens. They've got two experienced drivers, which is something they haven't had in a long time. So I'm hoping for less crashes, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, Carlos Sainz doesn't frequently put his car into the wall. Maybe he'll just get into that Williams, and it's something about that car. You just immediately find yourself into the barrier. But we do both agree that Carlos Sainz will beat Alex Albon. So Alex Albon, teammate merchant, who knows? We'll find out this year in 2025. P12, I've gone for Ollie Behrman. So I've placed the Haas drivers much higher than you have. Realistically, they should have finished the year higher in the constructor standings than they did had Alpine not gotten that double podium in that wild Brazilian Grand Prix. I think Haas probably had that position locked up in the constructors table before Alpine came and stole it from them. So should they have another consistent year, I think they'll be fighting for points most weekends. But just with the way Formula One is right now, should it stay the same, then it'll just be like a 4 points, 2 points a weekend. So points should be hard to come by, even if they are consistently fighting for them.
Yeah, that's it's kind of you put Haas quite a ways up there, much further than I did. So we'll have to see what happens. I've gone with Pierre Gasly in P12. I think this will be one of the teammate battles where Pierre absolutely destroys Jack and whoever else, Franco, maybe. We'll see. Is his teammate. I think the Alpine is going to be quick, but not quick enough for Pierre to be in the top 10 in the driver's standings. So we'll see what happens, but I feel pretty good about P12 with Pierre.
I feel even better about P11 for Pierre Gasly. I agree that Alpine will be good, but not good enough to crack the top 10, even though he somehow cracked the top 10 this last year. Let us not forget about that. But yes, Pierre Gasly in P11. I am basing this off of Alpine's end of year form and saying that they are going to carry that over into this new year. If they don't, write this prediction off. Whatever, I got it wrong. That's the way it is. I do expect Pierre Gasly to easily win this teammate battle. I hope it gives him opportunities to score points frequently as well. But I feel even better about Pierre Gasly in P11.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. So P11 and P10 I really struggled with, but it did not feel right for me to put Lance Stroll in the top 10 in my predictions. So I'm going with Lance Stroll in P11 of my driver's standing predictions. I think the Aston Martin, again, kind of what you said, I think they're going to be faster this year. I think they're going to kind of still be in no man's land at the front of the midfield. And I think they'll be a little bit closer to the top four. I don't know that they're going to compete with them regularly, but I've got Lance in P11, so I think that will be where he finishes. We'll see what happens.
That is a fair pick. P10, I have gone for Esteban Ocon. Seems wild to be putting Esteban in P10, but I do expect that Haas to continue on its upward trajectory, continuing to have that relationship with Toyota, continuing to be under the leadership of the new team principal. I think Haas is moving in the right direction. I expect them to have an even better season than they did last year, so I have got Esteban Ocon cracking the top 10.
That would be crazy. I think it could happen though. I do definitely agree that Haas is moving in the right direction. I've got Carlos Sainz in P10, which seems really bold. I know, but I just, it's got to be part of me liking Carlos and not feeling comfortable dropping him any lower, as well as what I just said with Lance Stroll. It didn't feel right putting Lance in the top 10, and it didn't feel right putting Carlos in the bottom 10. So that's what I've got. I think Carlos is going to get the most out of the car. He's going to beat Alex. I think hopefully it'll be a great season for him.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair pick, and you could argue that Carlos Sainz is getting a boost from us watching him win races in Ferrari. Let us look back to his days at McLaren, and he was getting the most out of a midfield car that perhaps wasn't at the top of the grid. Obviously, I would assume that McLaren was better than this Williams is going to be, but Carlos Sainz has performed well in a midfield car before, so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt alongside you. P9. I think we're going to agree on this one. It is Fernando Alonso. I think he's going to be in that P9 no man's land again. I think he will be solidly ahead of everyone else, and then a pretty large chunk of points behind those who are in front of him. I think we'll have another solid year. It'll be another year of weekends where we're like, hey, Fernando scored 6 points. I'm going to assume he got the most out of that car because that's what he's been doing for the past 2 decades. So Fernando Alonso, P9 for me.
Yeah, we agree once again. Fernando Alonso, P9. I agree with everything you just said. I also feel as though one thing to mention about the Aston Martin is with Adrian Newey there, I do think we are going to see some positive development over the year with that car, because that is something that I think is a staple of Adrian Newey in every car that I've seen him design, is some positive development throughout the season. And that's something that Aston Martin has never displayed since I've been watching them. So I think we're going to see some positive development, but I do think that Fernando is going to just kind of be cruising around in P9, probably for most races. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Aston Martin somehow has found a way to get slower with their upgrades 2 years in a row, so hopefully Adrian Newey can turn that around. Watch out for him in the last 6 races of the year, because somehow I always remember back in like 2017, 2018, Red Bull would just come out of nowhere for the last 6 races of the year and be competitive again. So those last two triple headers, have your eyes out for the Aston Martin, I guess. Now we move on to the top 8. Obviously, we have 2 Mercedes, 2 McLarens, 2 Ferraris, and 2 Red Bulls left to place. It'll be very interesting to see who we have placed where, if we agree on any of these placements, and what we think the pecking order will be like. P8, I have gone for Kimi Antonelli. I think that the Mercedes will be the slowest of the top 4. I feel like they will compete for wins and podiums, certainly, but I think that car will be probably the most inconsistent of the top 4 and probably just the slowest package in general. Obviously, being a rookie, I think Kimi Antonelli will probably make a few mistakes, maybe not get the most out of the car every single weekend. So I think P8 is a fair placement for Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah, I also have Kimi in P8, kind of for all those same reasons. I think it'll be a more competitive car in general because I think the top 4 are going to converge and all kind of be closer to each other. But I do think that Mercedes is going to have the slowest package in general, but you will get a couple outliers that are, tracks that they really excel at.
When
Like
it's
Las
cold and slippery, watch out for those Mercedes.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree on that. Had it been anyone else, I would have been concerned. You would have seen me knocking on your door, doing a wellness check. P7, I have gone for Liam Lawson. I don't really know what to expect from Red Bull next year. I would assume that they're going to be quicker, but no Adrian Newey. So whomst amongst us knows where that Red Bull would be. But I do imagine that there will still be a fairly large points gap between Liam Lawson and Max Verstappen, even if he has a good year. I think P7 wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, considering that Red Bull might not be the fastest package. I think he'll have a good year, have some bright spots, and so P7 for Liam Lawson.
And I also have Liam in P7.
Bang!
I agree with you. I think there'll be a pretty sizable points gap. I have Liam kind of further down in P7 because, I don't know that. Well, I'm not going to get into where Max is going to be yet, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But I have Liam Lawson, P7. I think that would be a great year from him, honestly. And I think that Liam will have a good year. I'm hoping that he gets the full season in the car. I think he will, unless something crazy happens. Sergio had amazing job security. So I would think Liam might too. Who knows? We'll see.
Liam doesn't bring everything to the table behind the scenes that Sergio Perez did, but I would
Sure.
imagine he would still get the full year unless he is performing absolutely terribly. So we'll have to wait and see. P6, I've gone for George Russell. I think he'll have a good year, probably sneak maybe 1 to 3 wins throughout the course of the year. But I just think that Mercedes won't be competitive enough of a package for him to get any higher. So I've gone for P6 for George Russell.
I have also gone P6 for George
Whoa!
Russell. Yeah, I think George is going to beat Kimi. I think that'll be a pretty close teammate battle. Honestly, I don't know that there's going to be a big points gap between P6 and P8. But I agree with you. I think he'll probably get a couple wins again on those tracks that Mercedes is, excels at. I think George is going to be the one that's going to get preferential strategy. He's going to be, obviously he's very good on Saturday in qualifying. So when that car is good, George is going to be on it. So.
Well, I'm glad we agree once again. Let's see if we can keep it going. P5, I have gone for Oscar Piastri. There was a point in the year last year where I fell victim to the thinking Oscar Piastri was the new GOAT and is going to outperform Lando Norris train. I hopped on it. I went for a ride. Upon reflection, Lando Norris absolutely smacked Oscar Piastri last year. The points gap was pretty large. The head-to-head was dominant in favor of Lando Norris. I think Oscar Piastri will continue to improve. Obviously, he's still incredibly young. He's only going to be in his 3rd year of Formula One. We saw a pretty big leap into his 2nd year, so I would expect him to continue to improve. I think he'll have a good year. I expect him to be closer to Lando Norris. Probably will win a few races as well. But Oscar Piastri, P5.
I have gone with Lewis Hamilton in P5.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. I think Lewis is going to have a good first year at Ferrari. I think he might win 1, maybe 2 races, maybe 3.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. Could be 5. But I think it'll take some time for him to get up to speed with the car, being in that new team environment. Obviously, he's been with Mercedes for over a decade, so kind of changing environments, changing the personnel that you're working with. I mean, that's a lot to kind of get up to speed with, even for a 7-time world champion. So I think Lewis is going to have a good first year at Ferrari. I think P5 is where he'll finish.
I think P4 is where Lewis Hamilton will finish. So we've kind of sort of have agreed on that. I think he'll have a good year as well. I'm so interested to see how he performs on Saturday. That is one of the things that I'm most intrigued about this year, to see if his qualifying issues was just something with that Mercedes that he couldn't get his head around over one lap, or if just Lewis has lost a step in qualifying. I'm not saying he has. Don't attack me for it in the comments. He could be the qualifying GOAT this year. I don't know. But he's going up against one of the best qualifiers on the grid. We've seen him have his slumps in qualifying before. So that is what I'm looking for in Lewis Hamilton this year is, does he have a better chance to compete on Sundays because of his Saturday performances? But Lewis Hamilton, P4.
Yeah, I've gone with Oscar Piastri in P4, so we kind of just flipped to those. Like you said, I think Oscar's going to have a good year. I think he'll continue to improve. He'll probably win more races than he did last year. I don't know that he's going to do enough to get any higher than P4, though. It'll be really interesting to see how the constructors battle also plays out. I think both Oscar and Lewis are going to be key factors in that, so we'll see what happens.
Well, you might have just inadvertently called Lewis Hamilton a second driver, but we'll just breeze right on past that. P3, I have gone for Lando Norris. I think he will have another impressive year, win more races. But truthfully, and I don't know if this is just like everyone's a Ferrari fan, even if they're not, I just am not expecting McLaren to be the fastest package this year. I think it is going to be Ferrari, and so that has influenced my decision to put Lando Norris into P3 for this next season.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've got Max Verstappen in P3. I think that Red Bull is not going to be the fastest package. I think obviously there's going to be some weekends where it is, but I've got Max in P3. That's kind of why I had Liam down in P7, is I think there'll be a sizable gap, but I don't think Max is going to be up at the top. So I think P3, P7, that makes sense. If I thought that Red Bull was going to be faster, if I thought Max was going to be, dominant this season, maybe like P1, P5, something like that. But I've got Max in P3. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, if P3 and P7 make sense, then surely P2 and P7 make sense as well. I've gone for Max Verstappen in second place. Maybe this is just because I couldn't in good conscience put Lando Norris ahead of Max Verstappen after watching Max Verstappen beat Lando Norris this past year. But who knows? Maybe one more off season of mental development for Lando Norris, an improved car for McLaren. Who knows how they could end up at the top? But it is hard for me to not put Max Verstappen towards the top of the table. He is the best driver on the grid. I hope he still has a car to compete at the front. I think we're clearly expecting there to be more of a championship battle this year, and I hope Max Verstappen gets to be a part of it for at least a portion of the season. I think it would be a shame to see this incredible fight at the front and a new champion crowned, and Max Verstappen not have been part of that fight. So I hope he's given a car to compete. Maybe not a dominant one, just one to compete. But I put Max Verstappen in P2.
And I put Lando Norris in P2. I think that Lando is going to have a great season. I just don't. I don't know. I don't think that car is going to be as consistent as the Ferrari is. Especially, we talked about Lewis going up against his teammate, whom we have both not mentioned yet, being a really good qualifier. I think that that one lap pace with the new Ferrari is going to be incredible this year. And I think that'll probably be the difference in a very, very slim and tight championship battle up at the front between Lando and Charles.
Well, there it is. There's who we have put in first place. Reminder that we have no idea what the pace of these cars are going to be. This is being recorded on January 13th at 4 p.m. And so we have absolutely no clue. But both of us are going all in on Ferrari. Charles Leclerc P1 signed, seal, delivered. Well, you heard it here first. Charles Leclerc will win the 2025 Formula One World Championship. I think he's coming off of his best year in Formula One. I think he is continuing to improve. I think we saw in 2022 flashes of Charles Leclerc being able to bring it to Max Verstappen or whoever it could be at the front fighting for a championship. I think he has the mentality to win a world championship. I think he's going to do it this year. So Charles Leclerc is my pick for P1 in the 2025 Formula One driver standings.
Same here. And I think that especially if the top of the field is converging, those top 4 teams, and Max isn't the one that is like leading, I think Charles is definitely the next, like mentality wise, he's the next best driver. And I think that if Lando had just as much, that much difficulty fighting Max at the front, I think it's going to be even more difficult for him to fight Charles at the front. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be a Charles Leclerc World Championship. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know we haven't seen Charles truly fighting for a championship. I think that man is going to be ruthless. Like I think he has that same lion inside of him that Max Verstappen has. I think he is going to be incredibly cutthroat should he be in the midst of a championship battle.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm really excited to watch him compete for one. I fully expect that Ferrari to be very fast. I expect him to dominate the pole positions this year. So I'm just pumped to watch it, pumped to watch Lewis in a Ferrari as well. So it's going to be great.
An absolutely incredible year of Formula One is just around the corner. But that is it. That is our full 2025 driver standings. Who knows? Maybe we should have predicted it 1 through 24 if this past year was any indication. But going off of the 20 drivers, this is how we have ordered them. And we would love to hear in the comments if you agree with us or disagree with it. Just please keep it nice. That's all we ask. And while you're there, like, subscribe, do all the things. But that is it. Brandon, parting podium thoughts. What do you got?
And we've got a month. We've got a month till we see what the cars look like. We'll see them on track next month as well. So I'm excited for the season. Excited for another full season of creating content and recording our podcast to share with you guys. So thank you so much for watching or listening. And I'm pumped for the season.
Yeah, we are so close to cars on track. I think it is like 63 days from the first Grand Prix. So we will be there soon, and we will be with you guys all season long. Thank you for watching, listening, and supporting. We will see you in the next episode. Until then, have a great day, and God bless.